Hello, everyone. Welcome to the event tonight. I can see participants rolling into the audience space right now. We're just going to wait a few minutes for everybody to join. I think we had 250 people sign up, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we have Spanish interpretation available. You can find that at the bottom of your screen and turn it on. And I would attempt to say that in Spanish. I could try. Tenemos translación en español. Es en abajo en la pantalla. Abajo, Vicente, sí.
Abajo en la parte
abajo
de la pantalla.
Yes, yes.
Muy bien.
I'm not going to pretend I have great Spanish. But
Could have fooled me.
It's a good opportunity for you, Congressman, to practice your Spanish.
Sí, cómo no.
We didn't thank you for that. I'm sorry.
Claro que sí.
Good accent.
I have enough of an accent in Spanish and German that I can get a native to respond to me and not know and understand what they say.
That's pretty good.
It's good. Exactly.
We'll just give one more minute and then we'll begin here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. I am MacKenzie Elmer, a reporter for Voice of San Diego, and I cover the environment. Welcome to our event, One River, Two Countries, Solving the Tijuana River Pollution Problem. And I'll let Vicente introduce himself.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm Vicente Calderón, editor of TijuanaPress.com, a news service platform and news production content that provides stories for both sides, for media outlets on both sides of the border. Well, when we talk about fixing the pollution across the border from the Tijuana River, we are not thinking that we have a magic wand that will help us to, at this panel, come up with a solution for a problem that has been here for decades.
But through our collaborative reporting project, we're taking a look at what some have called a crisis and the efforts being made on both sides of the border to stop it and the direction and degree of progress that we have made so far.
Mexico is actually telling us that there is no more spilling or pollution spilling across the border from the Tijuana River, according to what we learned during our reporting, but the US is not really convinced. They see things very, very differently, so much that the EPA is putting $300 million on the table to stop unwanted sewage water in Mexico from flowing over the border into the US. For this analysis, we invited people who has a lot of knowledge and experience dealing with this issue of the pollution from both sides of the border. First, we welcome Dr. Gabriela Munoz, a researcher from Colegio, a very prestigious think tank, Mexican think tank based in Tijuana and very well regarded among the academic community from both sides of the border. Dr. Munoz Melendez has a doctorate in environmental science from Imperial College from London, and she's a pioneer on teaching about reuse of water in Tijuana, among other projects with one called Ecoparque from some time ago.
We're also pleased to have Fay Crevoshay, Policy Director at Costa Salvaje, also known as WILDCOAST. It's an organization dedicated to coastal environmental problems in both California and south of the border, and they're working on some issues right now dealing with trash in Tijuana on the Mexican side.
And last but not least, we have Congressman Scott Peters, who represents the 51st District, an area stretching from northern San Diego County to Coronado. He joined recently other lawmakers in the area to get those $300 million for the specific and urgent environmental border issue. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you. I wasn't saying peace, I was saying 52nd.
Oh, 52nd District.
52nd District.
Thank you for the...
So that was very 52nd District of you as well. To our audience, you can ask questions throughout the panel using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. or the chat feature as well. And we'll ask as many of those questions as we can during the panel at the last half hour that we have. But before we start asking questions, we want to get our audience up to speed on just how long this pollution problem has persisted. So here's a short video to do just that. San Diego's coast is being drenched in sewage on a regular basis. It's one of the most glaring environmental emergencies in the region. Beaches have to close a lot because of the ocean pollution, and it's all because of the Tijuana River. It's an ongoing and complicated problem, and so far no one has put forward a solution to fix it, despite locals pleading at all levels of government for help. So, where does all the sewage come from? And who can stop it? To find the source of the problem, we have to follow the Tijuana River. Its headwaters actually begin on the US side of the border in the Laguna Mountains. Then it heads south into Mexico, snaking through the US and Mexico border a few times, and ultimately emptying into the Pacific Ocean from San Diego. On its way, this river picks up enough sewage to pollute Southern California coasts on a regular basis. To understand why the Tijuana River is so dirty, we have to take a look at the border towns that share the problem. As San Diego started to grow into a military town during World War II, Tijuana became a tourist hub for gambling and nightlife. Tijuana's population exploded. From 1940 to 1960, its population grew 10 times larger. The city grew too fast. Mexico couldn't build public infrastructure quick enough to keep up. People built their homes on land owned by the government, and sometimes it took decades for drinkable water and sewage lines to reach those neighborhoods. In the 1990s, after a trade agreement between the US, Canada, and Mexico, foreign companies set up manufacturing plants in Mexico. But only a few of them complied with regulations to get rid of hazardous and toxic waste. A surge in city growth and waste on an industrial scale were big factors in what caused this river to swell in such an unhealthy way. But it's also a matter of the land itself and how it's shaped. In other words, the topography. The city of Tijuana sits above sea level, and homes there are packed in along coastal cliffs. So when rain or sewage flows, gravity draws it all down to the US side of the valley. For decades, this pollution problem has been plagued by politics. All kinds of government agencies on the US side are responsible for some piece of land near the border where the sewage spills. They've tried to coordinate many times, but groups of bureaucrats have studied the same problem over and over again. There is an international wastewater treatment plant from the 1990s that's responsible for cleaning some of the water from the Tijuana River, but only some, not nearly enough to solve the problem and keep the coast healthy. Recently, leaders of SoCal beach towns got angry enough over beach closures that it got on the federal government's radar again. The closures were all because of the sewage. And the fact that this is a crisis affecting two countries at the same time means that the US and Mexico are ultimately responsible. The Environmental Protection Agency, under President Donald Trump, stepped up its commitment in 2020. It promised to devote hundreds of millions of dollars to the sewage problem. The agency says it wants to build something new, like another wastewater treatment plant, to finally put the issue to bed. But there's a monster under the bed. Someone is going to have to pay to keep that facility running and in good shape, and that's something that neither government has committed to in a real way. Right now, sewage is flowing even without rain washing it into the Pacific Ocean. In the coming decades, if the world doesn't slow down its use of fossil fuels, rains will become less predictable and more intense. The problem could get worse before it gets better. So for now, the whole border region has a lot of catching up to do if it wants to make any progress on the sewage problem, to stop it from spilling where it shouldn't.
Gracias, MacKenzie. Una de las primeras cosas que encontramos, some of the first things that we learned while reporting for this series of stories was that actually the Baja California government has been putting a lot of effort, an extraordinary effort, I would say, to stop polluted waters that will end up on the coastline on the US side.
Even during COVID, the Mexican government was putting money into cleaning out the main channel of the Tijuana River to prevent backups and clogging because it had gotten overrun with vegetation, for instance. And the Mexican government replaced an old set of pipes at a critical location that were always getting clogged with water and trash and caused problems on the US side.
So that give me one of the first questions. Dr. Munoz, do you think should be a priority for the government of Baja California to invest 300 million pesos to fix those pollutants from the Tijuana River to end up on San Diego, or do they have another priorities?
As an environmentalist, I would say that the answers that we need to solve a complex problem are multifaceted. There should be in an integral and joint way. So saying that, I wouldn't agree to put all the efforts in one single problem, because it's the result of many factors. And you need to attend those in a short, medium, and long term to try to come out with a feasible solution. So no, I wouldn't put 300 million pesos in solving the problem. I will need to develop infrastructure. I will need to stop corruption. I will need to ask big and small uses of water to control, to educate. And yeah, I will expect to have an answer, a proper answer, a feasible solution for both countries in some time, not immediately, but yeah.
Panelists, did you have any thoughts on that same question? Feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Fay.
Well, I could say, Fay Crevoshay here. I could say that, you know, the third world, this is the only border that the third world, as we call them, the first world, the country, the richest and most powerful country in the world, meet, the only place in the world. So you see the disparities, you know, right there when you cross one side or another. And to be the third world country is one of the economic definitions is to have few resources to many problems, you know, and you always have to be picking and choosing what to put where, you know, and that is always an issue here, you know, what to put where, because you have meager resources, you know. And in the United States, even though there are resources, you know, they have never come really to fix this problem, which is a problem between 20 and 30 years. So therefore, I really want to thank our, you know, Representative Scott Peters and the whole team of our representation in the federal government of California, who together fought to get us the 300 famous million that will come to help us solve this problem. Well, because it's very, very, you know, you put us in the national map, you bring us resources. Meanwhile, we're all studying and seeing where, again, same thing, where we're going to put the resources. Even
I'm glad you brought that up, Fay, because I wanted to ask Senator or Representative Peters a question. So even though Mexico did all of that work, we know that the southernmost beaches on the United States side have been closed from pollution as recently as July 1st. So we could use that 300 million to control the pollution on the US side of the border, but that's putting a Band-Aid on a problem that truly originates in Mexico. So Representative Peters, is there a way the US can really focus its efforts on tackling this problem at its source? Otherwise,
well, let's just say, first of all, I think it's fair to point out that our countries have worked together pretty well in this issue for a number of decades. We signed a treaty in 1944 to handle wastewater cooperatively. In 1965, we authorized an emergency pipeline. In 1980, we got a new treatment plant going in San Antonio de los Buenos, which is there today. And in 1998, I think the American government expended $235 million compared to $16 million for Mexico to build the South Bay International Treatment Plant. So this is an issue that has been worked on cooperatively by both countries. We face a new problem today, which I think your piece pointed out was one of quantity. In 1940s, Tijuana was about 20,000 people. By 1990, it was 1 million people. Now it's 2.2 million people. and they don't have the infrastructure to deal with that. In fact, I was looking today at the numbers. The International Treatment Plant treats about 25 million gallons a day. That's a little bit more than the plant San Antonio de los Buenos treats about 21 million. But also, I think you have to remember, it's not just the river. The sewage that can't be treated is being dumped directly into the ocean in Mexico, directly into the ocean. So
You're talking about this plant, yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's what comes. That also comes up, and it fouls the oceans, not just for tourists and for people in Coronado, Imperial Beach, but for Navy SEALs, and the Border Patrol is also heavily affected by this. So I think it's appropriate to ask Mexico to take care of their problem. And the unfortunate thing is that if this were just, if it went for the international boundary, this would be a fairly simple engineering project. We would look at what to do. We would fix the pipes. And the Mexican government, I think, is looking at a lot of rehabilitation, which I think is helpful. We might want to work together on capacity again together. We kind of need to know what Mexico is going to do before we figure out how we're going to spend the $300 million. But frankly, Mexico's suggestion is that a lot of it be spent on diversion, just holding ponds, to hold it, let it sit, let it dry out, or to wait till it can be treated. But I think it's fair to ask Mexico to handle their problem. And I think also, as a matter of diplomacy from the United States side, when we talk to Mexico about what we can do together, it's a fair thing to ask them that as part of our partnership that they pitch in a meaningful way. And I think it's not just the construction, as I think you suggested, it's the maintenance. And that's something that Mexico's going to have to do, and that's not going to be cheap.
If I may add something.
Please.
It's not about subsidizing Tijuana because we are poor and we have emergent money to invest. It's not about that. There are many problems which, Representative, I disagree with you. It's not simple. It's not just about an engineering problem, an online engineer. But if it involves a lot of the administration that is there taking decisions, that it changes rapidly. There are other political, administrative, cultural factors that may need to be taken into account to provide a proper solution.
To be fair, we did hear from the consulate. We visited last month to get an update on this, that Mexico is planning to pay attention to this problem and invest. They've got a list of about $99 million worth of projects, $55 million of funding. That could go a long way on their side. I think we should commend them for that. We should ask them to follow through. But it needs to be not just a Tijuana problem. It needs to be understood as a Mexico City problem, as a national Mexican, Republic of Mexico issue as well.
Well, if I say something about the solution of San Antonio de los Buenos, of the Punta Bandera, Punta Bandera was not maintained, that the treatment plant was not maintained properly, and it's not working. It's been over 10 years that it's dumping sewage, raw sewage into the Pacific Ocean. But there is a solution. There is Odis Asversa, an Israeli company that is already building a treatment plant. And it's the first one in Mexico that would be reusing the water. So not cleaning and dumping to the ocean, but in new climate change mode that needs to be happening now. They are going to reuse the water. I just want to put it up there because they're still, when they're talking about the money and the projects, the EPA is still looking at how to solve the Punta Bandera. That the Mexican government solved through a public-private partnership with with an Israeli private company, that is solved. It's a matter of time, a year, and a matter of giving them. It's 1,700 liters per second, and they have the permit to do 1,000. But if they are ready to do the whole thing, so it's one solution, one problem less. So let's celebrate. That
would be a great development. Water reuse is going to be key for all these coastal communities as we face longer droughts.
I agree.
Vicente,
I want to say that the Mexican government that was one of the first thing we found out during this reporting. They have done a lot in Tijuana, and one of the reasons we saw so much of a difference is because when this became quote unquote a crisis was when part of the pipeline of the infrastructure of Tijuana was broken and was throwing 400 liters per second of raw sewage to the river, which ended up and made the problem worse in Imperial Beach.
Yeah.
So they are really putting a lot of effort. There's a lot of talent from in the Mexican side, but so we have that point. So they are doing stuff. But I want to ask you, Congressman, because of course we have seen that we have been seeing some projects put together from different amounts of money from both sides, but they've been working. But here we are, after all these years, with basically the same problem. So should we change something in the approach? Because definitely this is not what we need to make this a permanent solution, no?
Well, I would say, look, again, I think the issue is that Tijuana has grown so quickly that the infrastructure hasn't kept up. And the working together, we have a history of in this country of working together. I have to say that it was I was very concerned during the Trump administration about the way that administration talked about Mexico, because Mexico is our ally. Certainly we understand that San Diego, not just part of our economy, it's part of our culture. But we can use that goodwill, which I hope is being reestablished with the Biden administration, to take care of this problem. But it's not just one event, though, Vicente. I think it's fair to point out that if you look at the beach closure days, in 2018, South San Diego counties were closed 101 days. In 2019, they were closed 243 days. In 2020, 295 days, and they have not been open yet in 2021. And I think that look, I'm not big about blaming. I just think we have a problem we have to come together and fix again. We've got some resources now from out of the USMCA. I think that the Mexico City and Washington can talk about this. I've certainly emphasized this to the new EPA administrator, that this is a really important thing, probably one of the biggest environmental catastrophes in the hemisphere. And we've got to come together. And I think the one thing that's hard for all of us is that all this stuff takes a long time. We can build a berm, we can build detention basins relatively quickly, but the fix will take some time to do. I think the most important thing is we've got some real resources available to us. Now we've got to figure out how the best way to deploy those resources. And we need a commitment from both countries, not just both cities, but both countries, that this is a priority. And I think we can get it done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so pollution takes many forms. So we have untreated water full of bacteria, but also solids like tires and plastic bottles it's just a ton of that makes its way onto the US side. If you get close enough to the border, you can see big trash booms filled with this stuff. So Fay at WILDCOAST is already working in neighborhoods on the Mexican side to try and stop tons of plastic from spilling over the border into Imperial Beach. So Fay, in your opinion, what would it take to stop the plastics from ending up on the US side? Is it a change in infrastructure or a change in behavior of the people? What do you think?
Well, basically, I think it's again an infrastructure problem, because in the neighborhood, for example, where we put a trash boom in Los Laureles, it's an underserved community, properly called such because there's very few pickup of trash. There's no pickup service of trash. There is no connection of sewage. And I mean, all the people who are listening, imagine yourself without anybody picking up your trash. What would you do with it? So these people put it in little bags. There's 65,000 people in this little neighborhood who really doesn't exist, really. It's all people who came and got organized by themselves. So we have an infrastructure problem. We picked up from February till today, 9 tons of trash, of solid waste, most of it plastics and tires. And that's 9 tons, 9,000 kilograms of trash. So it's a lot. If we could, and it's not an expensive project. If we could put some more of those in the rivers in Mexico, it's much cheaper than picking up later in the US. And we could start solving the problem. But yes, I agree with you what MacKenzie is saying, and everybody. We need to Mexico has to put infrastructure money into this, that we need pick up trash. We need to pay people to pick up trash, to put maybe big bins and pick it up. We need money, and it's not cultural. Mexicans don't throw the trash because they are dirty people or whatever. There's nobody picking up the trash in these places. So it's important to understand that it's really infrastructure, it's lack of resources or resources that are not going that way. It's not sexy investment, but it's very necessary. Also sewage is the same thing. All the cities in the world don't like to put money into that because you don't see it. It's not. But it's very necessary. And Tijuana suffers of that bad smell. We used to do it we used to have it only in the rainy season. Now we have it all year round. And the closures are all year round. And it is because of the growth of Tijuana, definitely.
I guess,
If I may add,
yes, please.
it's not cultural because there are, because Mexicans are dirty people that like to throw away trash. It's because the consumption. If you compare the last decade, because people are so close to the border that are used to consume. So consumption with open processes are at the root of the problem of generating waste. So, and there are some legislation in Mexico about circular economy. That means zero waste that is trying to be adopted even by the Tijuana's government, the municipality, in the way that they buy things. They don't, that the things that they are buying, paper, whatever, they are preferring closed loops rather than open loops. And that will take time, but it's a way to go. And of course, when we see tons of plastic, one single use, but if this is the only way that you can get clean water, then you don't have a lot of options there. So in that sense, yes, it's psychological. Yes, of course, there is a huge problem of infrastructure, lacking of infrastructure, or aging infrastructure, or few infrastructure. But as well, there is this psychological, social issue. And there is another problem, maybe you may have noticed in the Los Laureles Canyon, that once that the people get rid of their trash, that they put it outside in the street, they forget about it. And that is a problem. It's not that you are going to torture yourself thinking what is going to happen with that. But we need to look as a society, look at a wider aspect of this.
I'll be the naive gringa and ask, so why is there so much trash, or like, why is the infrastructure broken? Is it just because there's so many people moved at one time, or is it the tax base isn't large enough? Can we talk about more like
Los dos.
Yeah, no, lack of resources is the third world problem in general. Here, definitely, all these people, the 65,000 Laureles, a lot don't pay taxes. A lot of these people don't exist. Basically, this is not a neighborhood that is registered. This is a neighborhood of we call paracaidistas, parachute. People come and set squatters. Sorry, I don't want to use that word, but yeah, they come and they set houses, they build from whatever they find a job, and slowly they build 1 room, 2 rooms with bricks. This is how 65,000 people are living with no services. Now, the word underserved, definitely. So, you know, it's not, they don't pay taxes. Oh, they pay in their job. The job takes taxes. Yes, I agree. Vicente, yes. They pay taxes to their jobs. But I mean, really, they work in jobs that pay so little. And so the tax base is not there. And I have to agree, people are thinking, I know, corruption. Yes, we do have a problem of corruption and on money disappearing instead of going to be invested in all kinds of very important things we need to. But it's always scarce resources, big growth, big population growth together. As Dr. Munoz says, it's a complex problem. You know, if you want to go more and more, deeper and deeper, the complexity grows.
Well, that's what I wanted to just ask again. So you said, Representative Peters said, you know, it's a Mexican problem. But we know too that, you know, these areas are connected economically, historically, culturally. And in the video, we see that, you know, because of the military moving, the US military moving here was one reason why the population exploded. Also, maquiladoras or factories from the United States building in Tijuana. So there is some shared responsibility there, is there not? And and what mechanisms, what new mechanisms can the US offer to try to help with these pretty systemic issues? Is there anything that Congress is working on or can?
I'm not sure what you're suggesting, MacKenzie, that, frankly, if San Diego emitted sewage into the city from its residents, we would all say San Diego is responsible for it. I mean, in terms of responsibility, I think that Mexico would acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that we are a rich country and they are not, and it may be in our interest to help them out. I think what we would ask is that, we want to know what their plans are, what they're committed to. We want to know that they'll be able to maintain it. We want to know that the money won't disappear. These are all reasonable things that you would ask of any partner in any business deal. Sure, I think we're open to it. We have mechanisms to spend money on both sides of the border. We have a NAD bank, we have the IBWC. As I said, we have a history of cooperating on this, and the United States has a history of investing in this. But we need a partner. And I think, it would be a mistake to suggest that both countries are not incentivized to work on this, but certainly it's not the responsibility of the U.S. military moving here that Tijuana is dumping sewage into the ocean. That's their responsibility. It's something we may need to help them with, but we also need that people to acknowledge that I need to clean up my own trash.
Well, if I can answer something too, I think a solution to that problem of what I'm doing, what I think is to do public-private partnership, and by public, in Mexico, I'm not talking to the government, but to avoid the government. A lot of times they are a barrier to work, but with the social organizations like WILDCOAST and many others, not only us, that could be that bridge to managing resources in Mexico in a transparent, Americanized way with the reports and the receipts and everything as you do it here, as we do it here in the US. And we work both countries. There's other organizations doing the same, I think, like the Odis as Versa, just out of the box thing, which they brought the investment, they bring their capital, they do they risk, and they pay Baja per liter of sewage that they're going to clean and reuse and sell. I mean, there are solutions which can be cheap for Baja, which are very important impact and solution. We need to think like that, I think.
Fay, I just say that I would like to call out that solution as a real promising one, to take a quantity of wastewater to be able to recycle it and make it useful. My understanding is that one of the possible uses is in the Valle de Guadalupe, the wine region, which needs water for agriculture. So you wouldn't even have to treat it to drinking water standards. You could treat it to gray water standards for agriculture. Would be a lot cheaper and would move a lot of that water and waste away from the ocean. I think that's the kind of thing that would reduce the magnitude of the problem we all have to work to solve.
Essentially, mulling a question, I wanted to offer you an opportunity.
I would like to add two things. The first is that decision making in Mexico, Fay, is completely in Mexico is different from what is happening on the American side. Is vertical, and you need to understand that to be able to act. You can in certain things like federal waters, you cannot think or dream that the government is going to be outside of that. I don't think that they are corrupt people. Exactly what you are saying is what it has happened with NATMA. And I had suffered of people from Nebraska coming here to tell us how to add and multiply and sum up to make an inventory of the greenhouse gases emissions, when we know what is happening here and we have the capabilities to do it. Oh, because you are unable, because you don't know, because you are corrupt. It's not like that. Yeah, and if we don't trust each other and find those links to talk to each other openly, it's going to be very difficult if we continue to feeling that we are being patronized. It's not like that. So to start working, yes, I know you have experience. And I have experience as well working with people in America. And I respect a lot of people there. and firmly believe that we can have a dialogue that can take us further. And yes, Scott, it is true that there is responsibility mainly from the city of Tijuana, but there are many American companies here which were identified as the big users of water that were not paying anything for that, or were paying very little, or they even didn't treat the wastewater flows. So yes, we need to act together and to understand and to be able to speak to the same level. And just to tell you, maybe it's like this. And yes, of course, we are not, or at least I don't think that subsidizing the Tijuana, the government and some parties is going to go anywhere. But to have other dialogue, and because we are so close, to start a new border governance.
I think one of the, I think these are very valid points, and one of the reasons why we ended up collaborating between us and Voice of San Diego is because we see a lack of communication, or at least efficient communication between both governments and both public officials from one side and to the other one. Of course, one of the first things that was a big surprise for me is that the EPA will be willing to invest some of those dollars in projects in the Mexican side. We saw this from some kind of reservations, and even the people from, I'm not defending, it's not my role to defend the Mexican government or the people from CES, but one of the first things that they told us, we fixed this problem without taking any money. Where's the checkbook from them? Because they can talk a lot about helping us, and we found a way to fix it. They claim they haven't dropped spills from the last 3 months. I think that's an advantage. I'm not quite sure that this is good for Mexico, because what they did is just rounded or diverted the sewage towards a plant that hasn't been working for many years, and it's ended up directly into the ocean. So yeah, we fixed a problem on one side. So there's people working with a lot of capabilities in the Mexican side. But then I would like to, and I see the role of Mr. Peters taking care of the good use of taxpayer money from the U.S. Of course, I don't think the Mexicans, we don't want anybody else is fixing our problems. We can take the help, but I agree also with Dr. Munoz in the sense that it's not just the shared geography and the maquiladora plants that are making a lot of progress out of the plants in Tijuana. When we were under the lockdown, the Defense Department was the first urgent people in the maquiladora plants in Tijuana to go back to work because they need some components for the industry in the US side. So, I mean, we are growing in terms of the ties between Mexico, Tijuana and San Diego. The assimilation is going in certain sectors. I know there's a lot of people who doesn't like it in both sides. So I think it's the idea of this collaboration and of this panel is to find ways to communicate better and to see this a more efficient approach so we can plan for longer term solutions. Because of course we have talked about those proposals, but they haven't moved forward. And
Vicente, I think I completely agree with that. I think communication is really a prime issue here, and it's the governments often talk, and even the engineers don't talk. It would be really helpful if our engineers could be talking on each side of the border about what's happening in Tijuana, what do they expect to be fixed, where will be the gaps that are left, what are the best things that, given that information, that the United States could do with this money, because it's $300 million, but it's only $300 million. And we know that that the problem could be even bigger than that from an engineering standpoint. So I think communication is really key. I think also reestablishing excellent relationships between our countries, seeing ourselves as allies once again, as I think we do in this region very naturally, but maybe Washington and Mexico City, they have to maybe repair some bridges. But one of the things we're doing in Congress, we're trying to raise this up with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, as something that's a priority, but also the State Department. We want the State Department to understand that this is something that they have to work out with our partner, Mexico. I'm not trying to, I don't think we want to, I think we see each other as partners in the best relationship. But we have different needs and different abilities. We need to appreciate that. But communication is very, very important. I think the most fundamental thing, even before the money, because you could end up not communicating and wasting a lot of money and not solving the problem. And I think that would be a real tragedy.
Again, the naive gringa, but what would the State Department's attention do for this problem that isn't being?
I think, as Dr. Munoz was suggesting, that decision-making in Mexico is vertical. And so you need to talk to Mexico City about this. Mexico City needs to understand that this is a national priority. When you're dealing with the United States, this is one of the things on our list as a country. And that's why it's important for the State Department to take this up. The other thing is, all of these things we've done together, including the very first Border Commission Treaty in 1944, you have to deal with the State Department just to be able to be international. So it's just if it was, like I said, this is not a complicated technological issue. The city of San Diego's wastewater department, perhaps Tijuana's could do it if they have the engineering and the money. It's not a complicated problem, but it's complicated because there's this border, and that's where the State Department comes in.
You need commitments from Mexico City's government to match the funds that the U.S. will invest. Is it always going to take a matching of funds to
No, it's not that. It's a matter of, does Mexico City see this as a priority of the Republic of Mexico to deal with this cross-border sewage? Like, do we see something as a federal issue, or do we see it as something local that a state will take care of? For Mexico, and I think Dr. Munoz was saying this, she should correct me if I'm wrong, it's very important to have the backing of Mexico City to take these issues, because the autonomy and particularly the budgeting doesn't happen in a decentralized way as much as it does in the United States.
Yes, that's correct.
Learning both sides of the politics on this. And actually I'm going to serve up Vicente here to talk. We've talked about infrastructure and money, but we're like kind of skirting around politics a little bit. And I just wanted to ask Vicente if you could kind of educate us. He's been doing decades of reporting in San Diego and Tijuana on kind of what politics are getting in the way of fixing what amounts to a bunch of old and broken pipes, really, in the end.
You're very kind, my dear fellow. I don't think I can educate, but I can give you a little bit of examples or cases of how we've seen things. The management or the handling of water is a completely different animal in Tijuana than in San Diego. In many cases, political decisions are prioritized over technical criteria. And as we said, there's a lot of really capable people in Baja California and their water agencies, engineers, administrators, chemists, and many others with a lot of experience and ingenuity that are keeping Tijuana quenched. I think that's the word, no? That is not going really dry. Water has been a social gas in Tijuana practically from their foundation. And it has been used with political purposes and also with electoral purposes. And in most of the cases, as we already proved here, many citizens of Mexico perceive that the handling of water in Mexico is also involved with a lot of corruption and deficiencies. Mexican Public Services Agencies called CESP has been used as petty cash for political campaign, has been the platform to launch candidacies, because who wouldn't love a guy who brings water to the communities in the middle of the desert? So it has been used with political purposes that even are over or take over the technical decisions. Even the current governor, Jaime Bonilla, according to their rivals, are saying that he turned CESP, the Water Agency Authority, into his own war room. From there, he has said, as he's been attacking people and companies that Bonilla accuses of stealing water or not paying for it, including American companies. But these methods have been questioned and compared to mafia-style extortions against his political rivals. So this is the environment where the politics gets into who handles water and provides water to the community in the Mexican side, unfortunately.
That doesn't mean that the contracts and big users not paying enough or paying whatever they are consumed is not happening, Vicente.
No. I'm saying those are the accusations done from what side, but this is what is attracting more of the attention, while the people technically capable is not playing as more as the important role that they should in how this administration is handling the water. Again, they have been putting a lot of efforts on fixing the river pollution problem, and they are just diverting that pollution to a plant who hasn't been working for many years and polluting our own beaches, and people who only option to entertainment or to a day off will be the Mexican beaches are not able to go to the beach, just the people of Imperial Beach is complaining. So that's what I was talking about. I mean, of course, there's corruption in the US side in any other places, but for example, the handling of water, it's very clear how what type of animal we're dealing with.
And that makes also difficult, sorry, just to add, for the engineers, like Representative Peter said, to talk, because a lot of the engineers in Mexico don't know what the plans are because of the verticality of this decision making. Allá in Conagua, in Mexico, the south of Mexico City, they are making the decisions in the south. Meanwhile, very, very capable people here have no idea. And so when their counterparts come and we have the minute 320, we have a lot of agreements to talk to each other. And we talk to each other in this part of the border because of the verticality in Mexico City. The people in this side, in Mexico side of the border, really the engineers in that, don't really know what to answer because it's like out of their hands. So it's complicated to deal, even though here we deal, we talk, minute 320, pero that is a big issue.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Vicente, but what I learned from reporting, my brief time reporting on the other side of the border is maybe a big problem is that the Mexican federal government is in charge of like what amounts to municipal or city infrastructure. So to get something done maybe takes that State Department conversation to get the federal government in Mexico to pay attention to this specific area of the country. And correct me if I'm wrong in that interpretation, but.
Yeah,
I think you're right, and I have to say that what the locals, like the engineers, the people in charge, the technical people, do magic, because all the amount of water that we get from the Colorado River who goes to Mexicali, only about 15% is sent to Tijuana, Playas de Rosarito, and Ensenada now.
true.
So with 15% of that, we are keeping this. We as the people that want this to be moving, they are the ones being very savvy using only this fraction. So yeah, we need to go back and change those treaties. For example, we need to distribute again in a better way the water who gets into Mexicali, because there's also a lot of waste water. I mean, not waste, but ¿cómo se dice? Que están desperdiciando, doctora Munoz.
They're wasting water.
They're wasting water. You're losing a lot of water during the process of moving it from one place to the other. They are using, we were talking to other experts talking about how they are using water for agricultural purposes, but not the ones that are appropriate for this area, for example. So we are surviving with just a fraction of the water that we are getting from the Colorado River, but and we need to take care of that part too. But then is when I think if we are talking about being good neighbors, if the Americans go to other places to help intervene and improve conditions on other places, that's where we see the opportunity of a more in-depth approach so we can find the people who is really willing to fix things in the Mexican side, the people knowledgeable like Doctora Munoz or the good guys that really work on the water agencies, and find a way to communicate better to really push the money and the effort in this more productive and efficient situation, because the knowledge is here, as Dr. Munoz said, but we are dealing with these problems. I mean, the way they are distributing water, it comes from the 1970s, I think, and there's political honchos, so to speak, having rights to exploit water in Mexicali. And when the water runs low in Tijuana, you have to buy from those people. And even when they claim that is not happening, they hike up the prices. So, and this is not just a Mexican problem, because the companies from the US that are here are also going to be affected. The people who now is turning to Tijuana to find affordable housing from San Diego, from southern Los Angeles, it's going to be affected. So we need to see what have not been effective in the way we are approaching these problems, because we haven't even touched climate change and the impact on the region, but we need to see more on, I think we have to think differently in how we are solving or approaching this problem, no?
I wanted to just ask the congressman to talk about the IBWC. I know we don't have them represented here, and hopefully we'll have another panel where they can join us, but there is an agency that is charged on both sides of the border with trying to tackle this problem, and that's the International Boundary Water Commission, as it's called on the US side, or SILA, and I'm not going to attempt to describe the acronym in Spanish, but isn't that a body that could be used in a better way to start to do this communication, to start to share that engineering knowledge on both sides of the border? But I understand that branch, that piece of the federal government can only do what Congress has charged it to do. And so is there discussion of using or broadening or expanding its responsibility and giving it more power to do what we need in the region?
Hey, MacKenzie, I could be wrong, and you should follow up with me. I don't understand the authority of IBWC to be a limitation. We set them up to handle cooperative wastewater treatment along Tijuana, Colorado, Rio Grande rivers. I think they have the authority. I think the two challenges have been, again, the communications just between the facilitating communications and the level of participation on both sides, and the resources. So I think the infrastructure is there. Frankly, the political infrastructure seems to be there. We also have the NAD Bank, which can finance things on both sides of the border and leverage investment as a revolving loan fund that replenishes itself. So to the extent that Fay is referring to private people who want to participate, they can often get a loan backed by the United States government that effectively lets them leverage federal money to do that sort of thing. I guess to me, the big thing right now is figuring out, what we're going to do in an engineering sense, and who's going to do what and how it's going to be paid for. But I am much more comforted that there's some money to pay for it. I should mention too that the IBWC fund, when in the 1990s, was funded to about $100 million a year, and that took care of a lot of the similar problems that they had in Texas back then. When I came into Congress in 2013, I think it was down to 4.7. And we, in addition to the 300 million, we should point out that the delegation, with a lot of help from Senator Feinstein, has appropriated money year to year at a total of $80 million since we got in. But we're still only up to $30 million. It was the largest appropriation in 1 year. So
how much
I think the infrastructure is there, but and certainly the will is there on this side. And I have to say, advocacies like WILDCOAST and the people in Imperial Beach and Coronado, I represent Coronado, Juan Vargas represents Imperial Beach, have been really important in lifting this issue up to a place where I think that I do see the ability for us to tackle it, because we've got a commitment. I think the Mexican governments, as we were talking about, are in a mood to cooperate, and I think we've got resources.
Do you think that you talked about appropriations or money Congress would give to the International Wastewater IBWC? Is there talk of giving them more money this next round, budgetary wise? It's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's don't tell anyone I said this. This is just between us.
Okay.
But I think the challenge right now is not the amount of money. It's getting the plans. I'm sorry, I referred incorrectly. It's the BWIP. It's the Border Water Infrastructure Program. It's associated with IBWC. That was the fund I was talking about. I think the issue is not so much the amount of funding, but now I think the frustration and the urgency is that, we got to get through the planning process. I'm hoping that the EPA will announce its preferred projects in the next month or two so that it can go through the process of public input and vetting, and we can get started on construction as soon as possible. That's the big holdup now. The $300 million is $75 million a year. We can't spend that in year one because we don't have a project. So I think the bigger urgency right now is let's figure out the engineering of what we need to do. I think we're at least at a point where we can start funding that right now.
Congressman, do you think that the funding projects in the Mexican side is by now out of the question?
I would say not necessarily. I think, Vicente, we want to know what are Mexico's intentions. I did, someone mentioned Sue Sarnio in the chat. She's been fantastic, and she's been really focused on this. And so, it's certainly not out of the question. She's been talking with the Mexican government about what their plans are. They've got some serious plans to rehabilitate things. I think no one should expect that, we would pay everything, but we certainly need to know what the projects are that Mexico wants to do so that we can make sure that the whole comprehensive approach is integrated. And we're giving some thought to how to do that, what Mexico does, what the United States does, what we do together. But if it was up to me, what I would like to see is let's apply the money where it would solve the problem. What I would ask for from Mexico is an ongoing commitment for maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, and I think, I have not said it, I did not raise the issue of corruption. One of the other people did, but to the extent that that's an issue, I mean, that would be something we wanted to we don't want our money wasted or lost.
Fair point. And I think also Dr. Munoz mentioned also, because it's a really a big issue and we have to deal with it. And also you have to demand transparency. We will love to have transparency in this project because we know the way we work in this side of the border too. We are not the creators of that way of dealing. There's also backgrounds or previous cases in the US side that they say they're gonna need a wall of this thing and they pay for the one with less quality. So it's fair to ask for transparency and that's what we are just here to try to follow up and keep an eye on it, I guess.
Now, I tend to say this as friends working together on a problem, not as adversaries. I really think that, we have that our future is really bound together with Tijuana and San Diego. We have to get this right. We have to do it together, and we have to do it as partners with respect for one another. So, I don't ever want to sound in any way to be directing what you would do. But in a business deal, I would say this is what you need from me. This is what I need from you. I mean to be on that level.
And Susanio is so you people know, she's the U.S. consulate representative. Unfortunately is going out because she's finishing her term pretty soon here in Tijuana. So she has been very active in this issue. You're right.
She's done great work.
If I can second Congressman Peters, it is absolutely understood by everybody in this area that this is a binational problem with no solution unilaterally. They cannot solve it without the U.S. Mexico cannot solve it without the U.S. U.S. cannot solve it without Mexico. So definitely we need to work together. Also politically at this moment, it's a very difficult, moment because we just had an election, in Baja California, a new administration is coming in, right. New officials, we're like an impasse right now, a power vacuum, if you will. So soon in November, when the new administration comes up, we should really try to push it and go at it and work together. It's a complex problem because municipal authorities are involved, state authorities are involved, and federal authorities are involved in Mexico City. The right. 3 levels. So just for the public to understand the complexity of that.
I would like to add something. Yes, the central ways of the Mexican government are well known. The decision is top bottom, that's it. However, the water sector it was decentralized in 2000. So that means that there are a lot of organizations and institutions involved there. yes, it is true that there are no plans to the long term in the water sector. However, the jurisdictional responsibility of each of these is divided and includes the municipal governments and the state government. Actually, the state governments have to develop a plan for water resources, how they are going to be managed for the next 6 years. That is the administrative period. So they should done. It's not the responsibility of federal government to do those water resources administration plans. I should say that the last one that I know is from 2017 in Baja. So what's going on there? Yep. So if engineers in the SES don't know what to do, well, they know they have to operate the system, because that is a responsibility of the Mexican government, of the municipal governments, to take supplies and to get and to treat the wastewaters. That's it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
there's money allocated to that per administration. So that is clear. What they have to do in advance, that is not very clear so far, but it should be done.
so on that point, you know, we've heard recently in the news about a lot of like drought right now is sweeping the West. There's water shortages in the US, but also in Mexico. And I write a lot about water in San Diego, and actually San Diego is doing really well. We invested a ton of money into developing alternate sources of water. We have ocean water that we treat into drinking water, etc. Completely different story in Tijuana, I know, where the government has recently shut off water for hundreds of neighborhoods, blaming it, I think, on malfunctions on infrastructure or damage to the pipes. And so one solution that Vicente and I had written about was this interest in recycling all the Tijuana River water that spills into the US for reuse. And we sort of explored who that water belongs to, where it is in the geography, for instance. But Dr. Munoz, I know you have a lot of experience with water reuse, and you were just talking about that. So do you think this would be a reality in the near future? And what are your concerns, you know, with climate change, increased drought and heat, with water shortages in the Tijuana region?
Okay, three points. The first is, yes, of course, it is feasible to reuse more water. So far, CEST is reporting the reuse of 6% of the water that is generated. So there is ample opportunity there. In Mexicali, for example, the reuse reaches 73%. So it is possible, it is feasible, and it's there. And where can be used? Green spaces in the city are really scarce. There is around 1 meter per 1 square meter of greenery per inhabitant, which is very low, according to the World Health Organization recommendation. So it can be used for that. And but let's not be so tough on the Tijuana people, because the amount of water that they are using in average is 147 liters per second per day, which is around 38 gallons per inhabitant per day, which I think in San Diego is the double or the triple of that.
150,
So,
I think they said now. But
okay, which is very good, but it used to be very high.
yeah, it used to be worse.
Yes. So we are coming to an understanding here, because the pressure, and that takes me to the second part to the third point of climate change. The modeling on the Tijuana River watershed is that it's going to be drought, the rain is going to be reduced in 18% more or less to 2050, and that is the temperature is going to increase around, it depends of the model used, but 2 to 3 degrees more. So what means that we live in a water scarcity area that is prone to droughts. And according to NASA modeling, the droughts are going to span in periods. So now that it was every, I don't know, 70, 50 years, is going to be more frequent. And on top of that, they are going to last longer. So we have a problem there. a huge real problem that if we don't start, that takes me to the last point of the portfolio of water resources. Yes, of course, we need to start reusing water now. For 2050, that when it comes to all the water scarcity, we have other portfolios, not only desalination. I don't have anything against desalination. I know that it's going to come in time. But first, we need to look at the low-hanging fruit that is there, and we are not using. Reusing water, is that conservation, improving efficiency, are paths that we need to cross before.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Munoz, but let me add something. Yeah, desalination is crazy before we're using at least 95% of the water, reuse, because desalination water is ultra expensive, so much electricity. But I'm not a patience person like Dr. Munoz. I admire you for that. In 2012, sorry, the Tijuana plant, water plant, started investing in what they call the purple pipes for reuse of water. They started, built a little piece of nothing, left it there, no explanation, nobody knew, no answers, and never did nothing. Since 2012, we know this problem. Since 2012, there was a whole project of reuse, and nothing happened because we left it. And when we ask, nobody answers. Or so, yes, we have a problem. Yes, we know the problem. It's all true. But yes, are we going to solve it now, finally? Because we know about this problem for that long, and I'm a little bit out of patience.
You make me a great honor to take that patient. I am not, but I need to see where there are the opportunities, and there is a word for that: accountability, and accountability of all the people that are involved in the government. So was at some point that Mexicans that are so patient and need to be, because all the situation that we are facing, economical and insecurity, for example, violence and the rest of that, change the administration. And they're trying to change it for this. This is the way, the Mexican way to show accountability. You didn't do the work, well, we are going to change. I hope that this is going to continue to be a way to do things that if doesn't deliver, if someone steals the money, investment, that is going to pay high for that.
I have to interrupt you because I promised our audience we'd have some questions, so excuse me, forgive me. But so some of the questions from our audience, we have one from Bob, and he asked, how are Tijuana beaches being affected by all of this pollution? What about the sports and commercial fishing that occurs in Mexican waters? How can they continue to catch and eat the fish when we know the levels of pollution along that part of the border are so high? And this is also, I think, in reference to that plant that we said is not working south of Tijuana. It's basically a wastewater plant that water is just flowing straight from Tijuana into the ocean, which we've written about, Vicente and I. So talk about Tijuana beaches. Whoever wants to take that first.
Well, I can take it, I'll go. So we know very well that Playas de Tijuana, Playa Blanca, beautiful beaches, white sand, beautiful, are polluted. They have been measured by Proyecto Fronterizo once a week. They report something, and yes, they have been polluting by Punta Bandera. And it's a terrible situation because they have an incredible potential you cannot use. It has never been exploited because of everything. But in Mexico, they don't close the beach. And the people go into the beach, it's our parks, it's our public parks, it's free. So, people go in with all that pollution and with all that bacteria in the water, and nothing happens, or it happens. You get an ear infection, you get a stomach infection, you get a throat infection, in San Diego, they are measuring every day, and there is live real-time, information, and they close the beaches after a certain moment with these yellow things. It's a terrible tragedy for surfers and fishermen, but they do it. And then you still see in San Diego fish surfers and swimmers that still decide on their own private responsibility to go in. But Mexico, people don't even know it's happening. It's, I think, bad, but it's happening. And also the fish, they go fishing and people swim, and ahora sí que nothing happens until it happens. It's national character. But yeah, it is true, it's being polluted, and it's a sorrowful situation.
It's not just, sorry, it's not just Punta Bandera, which is the main source of pollution, but there's a lot of lack of infrastructure along the coastal beaches communities. Many of those used or owned by people from both sides of the border and from people from out of town, because they don't have the proper pipelines or sewage system. It ended up moving. The Baja authorities are very heavily promoting that they are building a new collector for those waters, and they are improving the infrastructure. They are doing that. Yeah, this is happening. But also there's a lot of work for this group that Fay mentioned, Proyecto Fronterizo, the Educación Ambiental, the border training, educational, environmental education, that is testing more often and pressuring authorities to close the beaches, because they have closed it a couple of times, now more due to the pandemic, but they are, I mean, there's a lot of more active NGOs or social or community groups that are more conscious and more active in the Mexican side. Many of those inspired by groups in this side of the border, many of those inspired from people who have been for many years here in Tijuana, and even from people, transplants from southern Mexico to Tijuana. I think we need a lot more information on the level of pollution and how it's affecting the ocean life, to answer the question that the people have.
There are many leaks. All the time leaks come in from the coastal communities directly to the ocean. And you never know when a main tube is going to break, and the leaks are permanent. And it pollutes, depends always where the currents go. North of Punta Bandera, south, the whole area is polluted, basically. Yeah.
And we said there's a Scripps study that showed that pollution from that plant is the main source of pollution for the California beaches during the summer months, the tourist months. So it's a question of which do you fix first? You only have 300 million. How are we gonna split this up? So another question from our audience, I'll put two together. Congressman Peters mentioned that now is a good time to tackle this because there's Mexican political will. What motivates that will, and do we know whether the new Mexican president feels this is a priority issue, or whether Congressman?
You want me to answer a question about Mexican political will?
Yeah.
Now it's quiet.
Wants to take it?
I mean, I'm happy to speculate on all this stuff. I think that
based on your talks,
the USMCA was an important piece of bonding for our country. It was an important thing for us to sign. It was an update of NAFTA, and I think that in that act, people understood the importance of us succeeding together. So I assume that that's part of it. I also heard from Sue Sarnio, the consul in Tijuana, that locally they're interested in getting a hold of this issue as well. So I don't know anything more than that, MacKenzie, but I took that as pretty promising, that they had a list of things they wanted to accomplish, and I thought that was something we could build off of.
Yeah, I just want to say something about the new water secretary that was put in place in this administration that is just about to go out. I hope they will stay. They're very good. They're strong. The Undersecretary of Water and Pollution is Rigoberto Laborin. He has been very good, aggressive against all odds, and he changed all the pumps of the main sewage, and now the pumps used to break every time a little bit more water came. It used to get break with all the trash that was coming with the water, but now this trash gets cut. They bought new pumps that cut anything, iron and cloth And so he did a very good job. And I hope he'll stay for next. He's willing and he's a go-get them. I don't know so good the secretary, therefore I'm not talking because I'm not speculating. This is a person I know and that did good work in the last 2 years. So there are people that are capable and they can come to the rescue. I hope he'll stay.
Vicente, did you have a?
Well, just really quickly, the governor, Jaime Bonilla, is saying that he has been put in charge by the President Lopez Obrador to fix the pollution, the transborder pollution. I mean, they have done a lot, and Rigoberto Laborín, the gentleman that Fay is mentioning, has been instrumental to technically achieve the progress that we have seen there. But I'm wondering how long that will last and what are the intentions or the purpose, because just keep in mind that the current governor used to be a politician and he used to work for the Otay Water District in the US. So I'm not sure if he's doing that because he wants to go back and work for the US authorities again once he finishes his term as governor.
You should ask him.
I will next time.
I know how he could make the US authorities happy, so.
Oh, tell us.
No, dealing with this issue would make him very popular, I think.
Maybe that's what he's doing. I mean, and that's where we need to find out what are the purposes, because if that's the purpose, if that's the intention, once he's gone, who else is going to take care of this? And then we run the risk of this other people who is very capable are no longer in charge of the same agency, which is a problem because never lasts in the Mexicans projects due to the political changes. The 3 years of the local municipalities and the 6 years of the state, that everything is erased from the point they take over, and this is a big harm for the community.
I like, actually, that's helpful to me. I've been using that rule is that we have to get this done within the president's term, and that's helpful to me to be able to say to America. So I'm not going to argue against it.
Another question is sort of something we touched on before, but wanted to know if there was more to say. Lenore asked, doesn't it seem reasonable to expect the maquiladoras to treat their wastewater and expect the US to encourage them to do better? And why isn't that happening?
Well, really quickly, we just went to a forum that the Water Authority did, and they mentioned that from all the about 1,000 maquiladoras, only a few fraction of them are really socially responsible, really considered socially responsible for the way they are treated water. One of those is the Coca-Cola company here that has its own treatment plant, but not many of the maquiladoras are compliant. They think that many of those maquiladoras owned by Americans or owned by other foreign companies are in some ways the ones polluting the river channel because they are discharging materials without the outside the proper laws.
So should the US government be enforcing those US owned companies to do better? How does that work? Why
that doesn't work? I mean, look, I would certainly criticize any maquiladora who's not abiding by the law, but they're in Mexico, and it's not, it would be an insult to Mexico for us to try to go enforce laws in Mexico. That's up to the Mexican government. I think it's out of our jurisdiction. So we would certainly encourage companies to be responsible. They don't work for us, and they don't answer to us when they're in Mexico. They need to be held accountable by the Mexican government. I would certainly encourage that, whether it's taxes or environmental issues or labor standards. We have some leverage from the USMCA on some of those things, but whether Mexico collects taxes from them sufficient to pay for infrastructure is not my call. It's really yes
and no, Congressman, because you keep in mind examples like Walmart going corruption practices in Walmart that was pressure from the big corporation to the handling of their waste in Mexico. So there's cases where we have seen how the pressure from the original entities work. So I know what it says, and it's a matter of sovereignty. People in Mexico is very delicate, conscious about it. But again, we need to see all the options to get to a solution of these problems. And by the way,
I would say that's a little different. I mean, I agree with you, Vicente. It's a little different problem idea than enforcing the law. I think putting pressure on companies, and investors are doing this increasingly as well, and I think that's good. But I think Mexico would see it as inappropriate for the Americans to try to enforce laws inside of Mexico.
Well, that was part of the trade agreement changes in USMCA, wasn't it? That environmental pollution is now something that could be used by the US government to hold other governments accountable for not enforcing.
My recollection, MacKenzie, and I would have to check this, but is mostly that we required Mexico as a country to abide by a lot of the treaties that we abide by to sort of level the playing field in a general way. The labor restrictions are much more specific, and I think really get at taking care of workers from company to company, but I don't recall the environmental ones being that targeted in that way. Is that your recollection, Vicente or Fay or Dr. Munoz? I think that's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. Yeah, we don't have any specificities about that, even though we've had a law, US, Mexico, and Canada for the environment. It never went into the specificities, just the idea of working together to solve environmental problems and not very specific down.
But Mexico had to sign on to a bunch of the treaties that we signed on to that lift up standards for everybody.
Saying that there are Mexican laws that specify strict maximum permitted levels of pollutants present in wastewaters coming from industries. There are. What will be the problem here to reinforce that? Maybe enough people that go and take the measures and have a lab that takes the level of pollutants, but there are laws. Saying
Yeah,
that
Mexico has laws of the yin yang, but application of the law, people making the law a live document. We call it letra muerta, dead letter, because we have laws, but nobody is enforcing.
I understand that, but my point was there is a framework there to act if it's possible. What in all the middle of that, there are some environmental closures in the NAFTA and now in the new NAFTA that yes, it is very specific. There are some clauses that are quite specific, and they may overturn the jurisdiction in some actions on some industries that they are not very clear for us.
Yeah, I think we quoted, it was a really good quote. I think it was from Rigoberto Labarín, that Mexico has a lot of stop signs, but no police in terms of
Not enough cops.
Not enough cops. Sorry. Yeah. In fact, Mexico had like one of the best first climate change laws, I think, of any country in the world, for instance. So I see what you're saying. Just another question, since we're getting close to ending here. Alec asked, one of the most successful clauses in US pollution prevention is the citizen lawsuit clause in the Clean Water Act, where citizens and nonprofits can sue a city or a government, I guess, for non-compliance with our Clean Water Act here. Does Mexico have an environmental law that's similar to this, or similar pollution prevention laws or legal tools like that?
No.
No,
the third party,
Yes.
they don't have a third party right of action in Mexico. They don't.
No, not third party. Whatever would be the closest, it would be la ley para la prevención y control de la contaminación, LPRG, whatever. That it would be the closest, but it is allowed under certain to have third parties under NAFTA, the new NAFTA, I think. But that is in a regular way, no, it doesn't.
How does that law you mentioned, it gets close to that, but not quite? What is the?
La Ley General de Protección al Ambiente.
Ambiente.
It can be used, how can it be used? Like,
It actually is the one that it treats on nationally on environmental issues. It's not only water, but land, conservation, biodiversity. air.
It's the general law of environmental protection. It covers everything and
Yeah.
not specifically much.
No, it does. Hey, please.
Apply it.
No, and it has been very instrumental for certain advances on conservation of biodiversity.
Not here.
Another question was, is there one US or Mexican agency, and maybe we've answered this already, but just to reiterate, one US or Mexican agency that is taking the lead on bringing Mexico and the US together to create a plan that addresses all aspects of the Tijuana River problem?
I think the SILA and IBWC would be the closest, correct me if I'm wrong. There are two, two water specific organizations in each side of the border. They're talking all the time. Their accomplishments are some, they are talking, but again, because they're local and they're here, what's happening in Washington, Mexico City is what's happening there, and these people don't exactly know. It's difficult, it's complicated, I think.
I think that's right. Like I said, I think the infrastructure is there. I think our delegation is really trying to get Washington, D.C. through the EPA on the environmental side and the State Department on the diplomacy side to pick up the issue as well, so that we engage Mexico City as well.
Yeah, we have to. Con agua.
I just wanted to mention, so the 300 million, the famous 300 million, as Fay calls it, that's on the table to create some sort of a solution. Some of the projects that are being discussed are like another wastewater treatment plant on the US side, or fixing certain pipes and pumps on the Mexican side. But it's been acknowledged already that that's not enough money to actually have a whole solution on the table. And it might take, multiple years to actually get that thing built. So I just wanted to hear suggestions for short-term solutions, because I know Imperial Beach is screaming about this. They have their beach closed majority of the year. What can we expect, if anything, until that's built? That might be a...
Well, I talked to Mayor Dedina about this quite a bit. I think we know the process for these long-term projects. By the way, $300 million is good news. I mean, I have to say, we all talk about it might not be enough, sure, but it's got the right number of digits. And remember also, I said we also appropriated $80 million to the regular appropriations process. So that's not all the money we have. Right now, I think the bigger thing is we have to figure out what to do with that and how to spend the first dollars. The EPA has got plans to come out sometime, I hope in the next couple of months, with their preferred projects. We're all looking forward to seeing what they want to recommend. But Mayor Dedina and I are really saying we need action now. And if you listen to my presentation at the subcommittee on the environment and climate, where Michael Regan, the new EPA administrator, came, I spent like 2 minutes on two sentences on methane. Then I told them all about the Tijuana River Valley, how this was an important project. And we need action now. And I think most of those, by the way, are detention ideas, so that basically ponds that would hold this stuff for the short term, so until it could either be cleaned up or treated. I think that's basically as good as you get. It's pretty cheap.
On the US or the Mexican side?
Well, potentially both. I think that's actually one of the Punta Banderas ideas, is also a detention basin, like a holding pond. So there are not a lot of options you can do that are great. We've already got we probably need more combs for trash. We probably need some rapid response pumps for problems that come up. But that's not a lot of money, and probably something we could do. We'll continue to work on that. The locals here on our side have been really good about coming together to talk about ideas. Greg Cox was really good in this. Mayor Dedina has been a leader. Mayor Bailey and Coronado is very interested in it. So, we're having a good partnership, good discussion about what we can do in the short term to get the beaches open again and make sure that the Navy SEALs and the Border Patrol aren't training and wading through this kind of sludge.
Yeah, I wonder how often the people, not necessarily elected leaders, but the people who are affected and living in the sewage, how often they get to talk. Has there been any real citizen joining hands across the border on this to try to raise it up? Well,
I'd say WILDCOAST has been very, very active and very forceful and constructive and articulate. But, you know, like I said, part of my district is Coronado. You know, those folks know how to express themselves pretty well. We have email, we have Twitter. I mean, they're pretty able to explain this this issue. I've gotten letters from third graders who've written me about trying to solve this problem. People have been pretty vocal about this. I would say that in those communities, one wealthy, one more middle class, it's probably one of the biggest issues around. And, you know, you don't have to listen too hard to understand that. So I think those voices are being heard.
In Mexico, less. We hear in Tijuana less. Sometimes I get, you know, I get angry because, oh, Tijuana, no, we're doing great, la, la, la. But and very little talk about the sewage, the smell, the rotten smell in many communities, disease and that stuff. We're not hearing enough, definitely not. People don't complain. They already have so many trouble in this underserved communities. Can't expect them to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
But to be fair, Colectivo Chilpancingo and Environmental Health in Tijuana and Environmental Health Coalition in San Diego had worked on that, mainly on the Alamar, Arroyo Alamar.
Another affluent for the Tijuana River, that's the Almar. I just want to say that, well, press is trying to put more press on it. I mean, that's why we are doing this collaboration, because we want to approach the issue from both sides, because we believe that we can really play a role of watchdogs that we haven't. I mean, if we review the stories, there's a lot more stories in the US side than the ones we comprehensively develop in the Mexican side for different reasons, but we are committed to keep covering this issue. So with the hope that we're gonna be talking about the improvements and the progress is done from both sides of the border pretty soon.
And we're trying to give a voice to Los Laureles community. We're, you know, working hard to give them a voice and put them in the public arena.
I know I have to let everybody go here. The Padres are starting. I'm just kidding. But I failed to mention in the beginning, because this discussion was so healthy and organic, that we have to thank our funders who have made this collaboration possible. That's the Pulitzer Center and the Water Desk at University of Colorado Boulder. They made it possible for Vicente and I to do all of this work and continue to do this work. We still have more stories coming. And also to Univision and our translator. Thank you for everyone for being here. And we hope to do more events like this in the future. And all of you have a safe and lovely night.